Welcome to Follow Your Heart here on the Natural Parent Magazine. I'm Ann Cullen, and today I'm talking about breastfeeding older children. And what do I mean by older children? Well, any age where you yourself start to think, should that child still be breastfeeding? For some people, that's when they have teeth, or they can walk, or go off to school, or all kinds of ideas we have about when a child should not be breastfeeding any longer. So I'd love for us to examine this a little bit, because for some people, this can bring really strong feelings, really strong reactions, very big opinions and judgments. So if we look at kind of what's behind breastfeeding. So originally I was an anthropology and sociology student and got my bachelor's in those things. And what human beings do across cultures, across societies, and in groups and families absolutely fascinates me. And I studied this long before I ever became a breastfeeding mother and long before I became a lactation consultant like I am now. And, cultures do different things. So different groups of people do different things. But one thing is universal. Babies need to be breastfed to survive. They will not survive. If you go back to cultures before they had, proper supplements, of course now we've got replacement milk that will keep babies alive if they're not breastfed. But before this was the case, before they had formulated these things, it is universally accepted that for humans to live, they needed to be fed breast milk. Now, the interesting thing is, once they're able to start digesting other types of calories, or get their hydration from, water itself or other liquids, people start to question the need for breastfeeding, or even the need for breast milk. Sometimes even doctors these days are telling women that there's no nutritional value in feeding breast milk, or that, it's more important. Often people are told that they get their calories from solid foods, and they're pushed even before the first year is up to get more food into their children rather than just breast milk. So this is where it gets a little bit complicated, because of course a child can survive without breast milk when they're able to start taking other foods, right? So we don't necessarily have to be breastfeeding them for their survival. However, we do know that there are many nutrients and, minerals, all that good stuff that always is going to be in breast milk, no matter how long that child is breastfeeding for. We also know that there's immune properties in there and all kinds of magic that we have yet to even begin to understand. So there are going to be nutritional immune properties, hormones, the sleepy hormones at bedtime, for example. There are so many things in breast milk that are going to be beneficial for the duration of breastfeeding, no matter how old your child is. So it's not a matter of survival, but it's still full of goodness. Okay, so another thing then we have to look at is, when we're saying a child is too old, what are we actually thinking? Well, it tends to be two things. One is about independence versus dependence, and the other, of course, is that people can get really hung up on the sexualization of the female breast. So let's look at independence and dependence. Now, say you have an 18-year-old who really wants to go off to study at college or university, right? And they have that career in mind. They really want to go. They want to study, but they're so anxious. They can't enroll. They just can't deal with moving away from you. They're so terrified, and it keeps them from realizing their dream to become a doctor or whatever it might be that they want to go to university for. So in this case, that dependency is unhealthy because it's keeping the person from realizing their dreams and going after what they want. Now, there's a very, very big difference from an 18-year-old who is really, really happy in their family. They really get support there. They go out into the world, they do what they want to do, and they stay at home until they're 25 or 35 or whatever it is. That's just our cultural hang-up or our ideas about what a human being should do. This is all a social construct. That's all it is. So for a child to need to wean from breastfeeding for independence, it's completely false. There is just, just no truth in it. And most of us, probably all of us that have breastfed older children, my children were 3 and 4 when they weaned, and but for those of you who have had breastfeeding experience with 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds, 8-year-olds, our poor's caregiver was breastfeeding her child at 8. Hannah here at the magazine was 7. We have to understand these kids are actually probably more independent than children who are weaned actively, say at 1 or 2. Now, of course, personality and all kinds of other things are at play. So I'm not going to sit here and suggest that the only way to get an independent child is to breastfeed them, past the age of 4 or 5 or whatever, because then I'm just as guilty as setting up rules for you to follow. So this is not about following rules. It's about following your heart. It's about following your child. This is a relationship between the two of you, and you get to decide, the two of you get to decide what to do, how to handle your breastfeeding. This is not up to anybody else to come in and tell you what to do. And, I hope that we can get to a place back in our culture where no one is weirded out when they see a 3-year-old, a 4-year-old, a 5-year-old, a 6-year-old, a 7-year-old breastfeeding. Wouldn't that be amazing? The day we see that, we have just normalized childhood again. We've normalized a part of childhood again. I say this all the time, but children don't do research. They don't read books. They don't talk to their friends about these things. They just do what feels right. And if they are still breastfeeding, if they're still asking for it and wanting it, and it has to be okay. It has to be okay. Do you understand that? So if breastfeeding was keeping a child from doing what they love because they were just so dependent on it, they just couldn't do anything else, and they're 6 years old and all they can do, they have to be with their mom constantly, they have to be breastfeeding constantly, and they're sad about it, they'd rather be out playing with their friends, then maybe we have something to talk about. But like my example with the 18-year-old going off to university, look at what they are being held back from, because it's nothing. They're not being held back. In fact, they're developing a beautiful relationship with their mother. You are making a very, very strong bond. You're following their lead. It's an amazing, amazing gift, and something that you will cherish forever if you allow it the natural space and forget what anyone else is telling you, how everyone else is judging you. And yeah, do what I always say and follow your heart. I would love to know, this has to bring up some feelings for some of you and some judgments and opinions, and I would love to know your experience. I would love to know, especially those of you that have really pushed the boundaries. Have you breastfed a child past the age of 5? Let's make this more normal. This is part of human beings. It is. So let's normalize feeding older children beyond 3, 4, 5 years old. And let's have a discussion about it, because I know some of you are going to say, no, it is wrong. So tell us why. Tell us why you think that. And I'll look forward to your comments, and maybe we'll talk about it in my live on Friday, 1 p.m. New Zealand time. Let's talk about it. Bye for now.